There we are. Okay. Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Saturday Morning Mastermind. I'm your host, Samantha Studebaker Carl. I'm here with my good friends, Jason and Lori and Catherine. And today we're going to continue our discussion of the book, The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. And we are on page 208 at the part titled Buena Vista Vineyard. And this has been a really interesting book. I don't know if you've been watching us for any amount of time, but if you have been, this is a fictional book. This is the first one. Nope, I take that back. This is the second fictional book that we've read, and it's been really entertaining and has sparked some really great conversations. So, um, before we get going on this, though, I just want to let everybody know if you're watching and you find this interesting, give us a like, share the video, and we'd love to have you join us. So you can find us by just searching for Mindset Mastery Collective on Facebook, and you'll find our group, or there'll be a link below the video where you can join us. So, okay, my friends, go ahead and introduce yourselves. And Catherine, if you'd like to jump out and read, that would be awesome.
Lori Emmons in Denver. It's beautiful here.
Hey, it's Jason Robertson, Tampa, Florida. Also, very nice morning. Good morning, good morning.
Good morning, it's Catherine Clement, and I'll get started on the reading. We're starting at Buena Vista Vineyard. In the next visit to the Midnight Library, Mrs. Elm helped Nora find the life she could have lived that was closest to the life depicted on the label of that bottle of wine from the restaurant. So she gave Nora a book that sent her to America. In this life, Nora was called Nora Martinez, and she was married to a twinkle-eyed Mexican-American man in his early 40s called Eduardo. Oh my God. Eduardo. I know there's a tongue roll in there somewhere. Who she had met during the gap year she'd regretted never having after leaving university. After his parents had died in a boating accident, she had learned from a profile piece on them in the Wine Enthusiast magazine, which they had framed in their oak-paneled tasting room. Eduardo had been left a modest inheritance, and they bought a tiny vineyard in California. Within 3 years, they had done so well, particularly with their Syrah varietals, that they were able to buy the neighboring vineyard when it came up for sale. Their winery was called the Buena Vista Vineyard, situated in the foothills of the Santa Cruz Mountains, and they had a child called Alejandro who was at boarding school near Monterey Bay. Much of their business came from wine trail tourists. Coachloads of people arrived at hourly intervals. It was quite easy to improvise, as the tourists were genuinely quite gullible. It went like this. We're going to call him Ed. Ed would decide which wines to put out in the glasses before each coachload arrived and hand Nora the bottles. Whoa, Nora. Despacio. You're putting too much, he reprimanded in his good-humored Spanglish when she was a bit too liberal with the measures. And then, when the tourists came, Nora would inhale the wines as they sipped and swilled them and try to echo Ed and say the right things. There is a woodiness to the bouquet with this one, or you'll note the vegetal aromas here, the bright, robust blackberries and fragrant nectarine, perfectly balanced with the echoes of charcoal. Each life she had experienced had a different feeling, like different movements in a symphony, and this one felt quite bold and uplifting. Ed was incredibly sweet-natured, and their marriage seemed to be a successful one. Maybe even one to rival the life of the couple on the wine bottle of the bottle of ropey wine she drank with Dylan, while being licked by his astronomically large dog. She even remembered their names, Janine and Terence Thornton. She felt like she too was now living in a label on a bottle. She also looked like it. Perfect Californian hair and expensive-looking teeth, tanned and healthy despite the presumably quite substantial consumption of syrup. She had the kind of flat, hard stomach that suggested hours of Pilates every week. However, it wasn't just easy to fake wine knowledge in this life. It was easy to fake everything, which could have been a sign that the key to her apparently successful union with Ed was that he wasn't really paying attention. After the last of the tourists left, Ed and Nora sat out under the stars with a glass of their own wine in their hands. The fires have died out in LA now, he told her. Nora wondered who lived in Los Angeles home she had in her pop star life. That's a relief. Yeah. Isn't it beautiful? She asked him, staring up at that clear sky full of constellations. What? The galaxy. Yes. He was on his phone and didn't say very much, and then he put his phone down and still didn't say very much. She had known 3 types of silence in relationships. There was passive aggressive silence, obviously. There was the we no longer have anything to say silence. And then there was the silence that Ed and she seemed to have cultivated. The silence of not needing to talk, of just being together, of together being, the way you could be happily silent with yourself. But still, she wanted to talk. We're happy, aren't we? Why the question? Oh, I know we are happy. I just like to hear you say it sometimes. We're happy, Nora. She sipped her wine and looked at her husband. He was wearing a sweater, even though it was perfectly mild. They stayed there a while, and then he went to bed before her. I'm just going to stay out here for a while. Ed seemed fine with that and sloped off after planting a small kiss on the top of her head. She stepped out with her glass of wine and walked along the moonlit pines. She stared at the clear sky full of stars. There was absolutely nothing wrong with this life. But she felt inside her a craving for other things, other lives, other possibilities. She felt like she was still in the air, not ready to land. Maybe she was more like Hugo Lefrere than she had realized. Maybe she could flick through lives as easily as flicking pages. She gulped the rest of the wine, knowing there would be no hangover. Earth and wood, she said to herself. She closed her eyes. It wasn't long now, not long at all. She just stood there and waited to disappear. The many lives of Nora Seed. Nora came to understand something Hugo had never fully explained to her in the kitchen in Svalbard. You didn't have to enjoy every aspect of each life to keep having the option of experiencing them. You just had to never give up on the idea that there would be a life somewhere that could be enjoyed. Give me just a second. Equally, enjoying a life didn't mean you stayed in that life. You only stayed in a life forever if you couldn't imagine a better one. And yet, paradoxically, the more lives you tried, the easier it became to think of something better, as the imagination broadened a bit more with every new life she sampled. So in time, and with Mrs. Elm's assistance, Nora took lots of books from the shelves and ended up having to taste lots of different lives in her search for the right one. She learned that undoing regrets was really a way of making wishes come true. There was almost any life. She was living in one universe, after all. In one life, she had quite a solitary time in Paris and taught English at a college in Montparnasse and cycled by the Seine and read lots of books on park benches. I'm sure I didn't say any of those right. In another, she was a yoga teacher with the neck mobility of an owl. In one life, she had kept up swimming, but had never tried to pursue the Olympics. She just did it for fun. In that life, she was a lifeguard in the beach resort of Sitges near Barcelona, was fluent in both Catalan and Spanish, and had a hilarious best friend called Gabriela who taught her how to surf, and who she shared an apartment with 5 minutes from the beach. There was one existence where Nora had kept up the fiction writing she had occasionally toyed with at university and was now a published author. Her novel, The Shape of Regret, received rave reviews and was shortlisted for a major literary award. In that life, she had lunch in a disappointingly banal Soho members club with two affable, easygoing producers from Magic Lantern Productions who wanted to option it for film. She ended up choking on a piece of flatbread and knocking her red wine over one of the producer's trousers and messing up the whole meeting. In one life, she had a teenage son called Henry, who she never met properly because he kept slamming doors in her face. In one life, she was a concert pianist, currently on tour in Scandinavia, playing night after night to besotted crowds and fading into the Midnight Library during one disastrous rendition of Chopin's Piano Concerto No. 2 at the Finlandia Hall in Helsinki. In one life, she only ate toast. In one life, she went to Oxford and became a lecturer in philosophy at St. Catherine's College and lived by herself in a fine Georgian townhouse in a genteel row amid an environment of respectable calm. In another life, Nora was a sea of emotion. She felt everything deeply and directly, every joy and every sorrow. A single moment could contain both intense pain, pleasure, and intense pain, as if both were dependent on each other like a pendulum in motion. A simple walk outside, and she could feel a heavy sadness simply because the sun had slipped behind a cloud. Yet, conversely, meeting a dog who was clearly grateful for her attention caused her to feel so exultant that she felt she could melt into the pavement with sheer bliss. In that life, she had a book of Emily Dickinson poems beside her bed, and she had a playlist called Extreme States of Euphoria, and another one called The Glue to Fix Me When I Am Broken. In one life, she was a travel vlogger who had 1,750,000 YouTube subscribers and almost as many people following her on Instagram. And her most popular video was one where she fell off a gondola in Venice. She also had one about Rome called Aromatherapy. In one life, she was a single parent to a baby that literally wouldn't sleep. In one life, she ran the showbiz column in a tabloid newspaper and did stories about Ryan Bailey's relationships. In one life, she was the picture editor at the National Geographic. In one life, she was a successful eco-architect who lived a carbon-neutral existence in a self-designed bungalow that harvested rainwater and ran on solar power. In one life, she was an aid worker in Botswana. In one life, a cat sitter. In one life, a volunteer in a homeless shelter. In one life, she was sleeping on her only friend's sofa. In one life, she taught music in Montreal. In one life, she spent all day arguing with people she didn't know on Twitter and ended a fair proportion of her tweets by saying, "Do better," while secretly realizing she was telling herself to do that. In one life, she had no social media accounts. In one life, she'd never drunk alcohol. In one life, she was a chess champion and currently visiting Ukraine for a tournament. In one life, she was married to a minor royal and hated every minute. In one life, her Facebook and Instagram only contained quotes from Rumi and Lao Tzu. In one life, she was on to her third husband and already bored. In one life, she was a vegan powerlifter. In one life, she was traveling around South America and caught up in an earthquake in Chile. In one life, she had a friend called Becky who said, "Oh, what larks," whenever anything good was happening. In one life, she met Hugo yet again, diving off the Corsican coast, and they talked quantum mechanics and got drunk together at a beachside bar until Hugo slipped away out of that life mid-sentence. So Nora was left talking to a blank Hugo who was trying to remember her name. In some lives, Nora attracted a lot of attention. In some lives, she attracted none. In some lives, she was rich. In some lives, she was poor. In some lives, she was healthy. In some lives, she couldn't climb the stairs without getting out of breath. In some lives, she was in a relationship. In others, she was solo. In many, she was somewhere in between. In some lives, she was a mother, but in most, she wasn't. She had been a rock star, an Olympian, a music teacher, a primary school teacher, a professor, a CEO, PA, a chef, a glaciologist, a climatologist, an acrobat, a tree planter, an audit manager, a hairdresser, professional dog walker, an office clerk, software developer, a receptionist, a hotel cleaner, politician, a lawyer, a shoplifter, the head of an ocean protection charity, a shop worker again, a waitress, a first line supervisor, a glass blower, and 1,000 other things. She'd had horrendous commutes in cars, on buses, in trains, on ferries, on bike, on foot. She'd had emails and emails and emails. She'd had a 53-year-old boss with halitosis touch her leg under a table and text her a photo of his penis. She'd had colleagues who lied about her and colleagues who loved her, and, mainly, colleagues who were entirely indifferent. In many lives, she chose not to work, and in some, she didn't choose not to work, but still couldn't find any. In some lives, she smashed through the glass ceiling, and in some, she just polished it. She had been excessively over and underqualified. She had slept brilliantly and terribly. In some lives, she was on antidepressants, and in others, she didn't even take an ibuprofen for a headache. In some lives, she was a physically healthy hypochondriac, and in some, a seriously ill hypochondriac, and in most, she wasn't a hypochondriac at all. There was a life where she had chronic fatigue, a life where she had cancer, a life where she'd suffered a herniated disc and broken her ribs in a car accident. There had, in short, been a lot of lives. And among those lives, she had laughed and cried and felt calm and terrified and everything in between. And between these lives, she always saw Mrs. Elm in the library. And at first, it seemed that the more lives she experienced, the fewer problems there seemed to be with the transfer. The library never felt like it was on the brink of crumbling or falling apart or at risk of disappearing completely. The lights didn't even flicker through many of the changeovers. It was as though she had reached some state of acceptance about life, that if there were a bad experience, there wouldn't only be bad experiences. She realized that she hadn't tried to end her life because she was miserable, but because she had managed to convince herself that there was no way out of her misery. That, she supposed, was the basis of depression as well as the difference between fear and despair. Fear was when you wandered into a cellar and worried that the door would close shut. Despair was when the door closed and locked behind you. But with every life, she saw that metaphorical door widen a little further as she grew better at using her imagination. Sometimes she was in a life for less than a minute, while in others she was there for days or weeks. It seemed the more lives she lived, the harder it was to feel at home anywhere. The trouble was that eventually Nora began to lose any sense of who she was. Like a whispered word passed around from ear to ear. Even her name began to sound like just a noise signifying nothing. "It's not working," she told Hugo in her last proper conversation with him in that beach bar in Corsica. "It's not fun anymore. I am not you. I need somewhere to stay, but the ground is never stable. The fun is in the jumping, mon ami. What if it's in the landing? And that was the moment he had returned to his purgatorial video store. I'm sorry, his other self said as he sipped his wine and the sun set before him. I've forgotten who you are. Don't worry, she said. So have I. As she too faded away like the sun that had just been swallowed by the horizon. That's probably good.
Yeah, that's a good place to stop. That's interesting how she or her realization of why she had committed suicide. Let's see, what was it? She realized she hadn't tried to end her life because she was miserable, but because she had managed to convince herself that there was no way out of her misery. And then she realized, of course, right before that, she reached the state of acceptance about life, that if there was bad experience, there wouldn't only be bad experiences. I think that's a good point, is that even though we have times in our lives that are, seemingly sucky, is that we also have times that are really amazing. It's just like the difference between winter and summer, or, well, I guess winter is one extreme, summer being the other extreme, and then there's all this in between in fall and spring where there's a lot of beautiful weather. And I mean, if we kind of look at our lives like the seasons, and that it's always changing and we never know what to expect, and even if we think we know what to expect, it probably won't happen, or it'll happen different than we think it does. And so I think that's it's a good thing to think about, especially if we are feeling depressed at any given time, or upset or fearful or whatever, is just to remember that that's not whatever it is that's happening in our lives right now is, what's the cliche, this too shall pass. That's the thought. It's just remember that this too shall pass, if it's unpleasant. And then if it's positive and wonderful, is to remember also that that time will pass as well. And so we should appreciate every moment of that with extra vigor, I guess, and realize that. But and to remember, okay, even though it's going to pass, it will come back around again too. um I'll let you guys talk for a minute.
Yeah, because we're so talkative, right? I can only say that it would be amazing if it was that easy to actually change the life you're in.
Yeah, sure. I like where she likened to undoing regrets as making wishes come true. You can undo regrets. But I don't know that, the other saying, the grass is greener, always greener on the other side, kind of comes to mind, where they're talking about how it gets easier for Nora, the more lives she experienced, the easier it was for her to imagine a better life. So I guess it sort of goes along with expanding your horizons and your belief, right? We all got one shot. We got one shot, at least this time. I mean, you can have different seasons of your life, I guess, and recreate yourself. That's, you see like, I guess you don't see it as much as you used to, but it seemed like as I was growing up, I see more entertainers sort of um, uh, reintroducing themselves in a different way, you know. Um, like if they're a music artist, they'd start playing or singing or performing a whole different type of music, sort of mix it up, and and some would even create new albums under pseudonyms and, you know, fake names and fake identities, so they could, you know, test out a different, I don't know, aspect of their life, or some, you know, a different type of genre that they'd like to do without interrupting their current success. So, you know, who's to say you can't, I guess there's limits, but who's to say that you can't, you know, change quite a bit in your life, and go off in a different path, and um, you know, just let your friends and family members know what you're gonna do it before you do that. If you decide to go walk the Appalachian Trail or something like that one day, just disappear into the mountains. Let people know. Let people...
That's a good point. That's funny. Chris and I were talking the other night, and his aunt just passed away just recently, very well, kind of suddenly, and there she was 67, and we were both kind of talking because he's down in Georgia right now with his uncle, and just being there for him, and so we had conversation back and forth between the two of us, is like, you know, okay, this, you know, trying to be in his uncle's shoes, if you will. I'm like, what would you do, you know, if I suddenly was gone, or, you know, vice versa, what would I do if, you know, you were suddenly gone, kind of one of those things. And we were exploring that whole kind of thing of, other than the logistics of financials and all the mumbo jumbo along that lines, I'm like, you know, what would you do with yourself? And he's like, oh, I don't know, probably just, you know, get working and stay busy and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, I would totally go off the rails, man. I'm like, I'm gonna go off the rails. This is gonna be an excuse to go off the rails. I'm just gonna like jump in a van and become a vagabond gypsy, and go to Burning Man and hike the Appalachian Trail. Just act like a crazy person. I mean, of course, I'd let my kids know I was gonna go off the rails, but, you know, like let my hair be all crazy and just be bonkers for a while, just as an excuse to be bonkers. He laughed about that, and he's like, "Oh, yeah, okay." Laughed at me like I'm cuckoo. I'm like, well, you know, it's funny, you know, this part in here where it says that she kind of started to lose any sense of who she was, you know, or her sense of self, if you will. And I'm like, you know, how much of our sense of self is what keeps us kind of trapped in this narrow kind of space of who we think we should be, or think we ought to be, or whatever. And we could let go of like all of this, what we think we're supposed to do, or think we who we think we should, or what we think we're capable of. And I think that's one of the things where she's like, you know, as she's going through all these different lives and her imagination is expanding, as she's realizing that she's capable of so much more than what she thinks she is, you know, and that she could do anything if she wanted to. And then that sense of self, I think, is sometimes part of it can be like the core of regrets and disappointments of ourselves. And so I thought that is just really interesting. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I'd actually go off the rail, but it's funny to talk about.
Yeah, it's kind of like our sense of self, you know, that we've cultivated over our entire life, and lots of developed as children, you know, we sort of use that as a guidance. And it was interesting, like you were saying, how Nora sort of disconnected from her sense of self um, from the beginning of the book, and now perhaps was seeing things differently. But you know, I mean, to step in, she's trying out all these different lives. Is she thinking that because now that she's steps into a life, like say she's successful owner of a vineyard with um, her, you know, Edward Martinez, Eduardo, and they're successful, and it's peaceful, and she like can't find anything wrong with it, but then somehow she does find something, and it's not that she decides to stay in the life and make it better. She's just kind of ready to leave and experience something else. So I mean, there's this discontentment, so to speak, that, I mean, it seems like, you know, she was in the beginning of the book, she's not happy with where she was and what was going on. She didn't feel like she had very many options, and she had all these regrets, and now she's experiencing all these new lives, and she's discontent with and kind of in a different direction, it seems. A little hard to follow.
I was thinking as I was reading through all those different lives that she had that I've had several of those lives just during this life. There's quite a few of them I've had. It kind of reminded me how we, you know, in this life, we get something in our mind that we think we want to do, or something that we think will fulfill us, or sounds exciting, or whatever it is. Maybe it's a relationship even. And then, you know, at some point in there, like the honeymoon period is over and reality kind of sets in, and the rose-colored glasses come off, and we start looking around at either the person or the situation or the job or the whatever it was. And instead of being focused on the good stuff, we start focusing on the bad stuff. And then the next thing you know, something about that kind of falls apart, almost like these lives are falling or like disappearing out from underneath her. That's kind of what happens. At least that's been my experience. It's funny because I was talking to my granddaughter yesterday, and she's like, I I think I'm manifesting stuff. And I said, you are manifesting stuff. I said, we are all manifesting stuff all the time. We just don't realize it. And but then we had the discussion about, you know, be careful what you ask for, because things might not, you got to think it through a little bit, you know, because you get it in your head that you want this or you want that. And like, I swear, I don't know if it's true, but I swear, like with my son, I know he gets into a job and he immediately starts thinking about and getting, you know, he's excited about the job, but he immediately starts thinking about um, whether it's getting a promotion, or like what, like how much he's going to learn in that job, and what the next job is going to be for him. Like he starts thinking about that because he's excited, and I swear he manifests himself right out of the one that he's got. You know, it's the weirdest thing. And I do the same thing in my life. I'm not picking on my son by any means, but just as an example, you know, like, and it's almost what's happening with her with these whole lives and only staying in them for a minute. I mean, there's been some decisions in my life I've only stuck with for a minute too. So, or I've known, right away, gotten a clear signal that something was the wrong way and changed my mind, and turned around and taken a different path. So I think that's kind of curious about how this book is going. She's been through a lot of lives. I'm sure all of us have too. I'm really curious as to which life she decides to go with, because I'm hoping she decides to live at the end of this book. They're still trying to resuscitate her or something, I think, aren't they?
Yeah, maybe, or she's in a coma, or it's all happening in a split second. I mean, who knows? But yeah, I think it's interesting and wondering, like you said, where is she going to land? And if she is kind of losing a sense of self, what is that? I mean, I think that that's all the mumbo jumbo falling away, but also, um, what is she going to do with all of this? All these experiences that she tried on, what is it going to land on? Is it going to land on being a certain career path? Is it going to be just being in a certain kind of relationship, or having a certain kind of experience? What is it that is going to have, I mean, if she keeps trying new things and she's really not getting any satisfaction out of any of them, what is she going to find satisfaction in? And I mean, if there is like an unlimited number of things that she could try on, what's going to be the thing that keeps her, sticks, if you will. And yet, Hugo, I can see his point of view too, that because she's sitting there starting to think that she wants to settle down in a life. And but what does that mean for her? And then Hugo, on the other hand, is sitting there going, it's all in the moment, and that's all that matters, is just the experience right now. And and I can see that aspect of it too. And like what you were saying, Catherine, you get into, we have an experience, it's fun, it's exciting, and then all of a sudden that kind of honeymoon phase wears off and you start going, ugh, you know okay, or not, but or maybe you're just like, oh, okay, well, now I'm just kind of bored, or whatever, and it's like, oh, I need a vacation so I could get some excitement back or whatever. And I'm curious as to how she's going to land in a life and keep the excitement alive in her life, or at least have it be a satisfactory, that she enjoys and wants to move forward. What is her kind of moving forward philosophy going to be? Because I think that's kind of what it boils down to, is that, in her previous existence, she didn't really have a guiding philosophy that kept her excited about life or motivated in life. And because I feel like we need kind of some driving force that keeps us going in our current existence, that either drives our enjoyment of life, or our um, relationships, or our job, or whatever it is. What is the thing that literally, I mean, keeps us happy in our lives, other than thinking happy thoughts? Obviously, if we're trying to think the positive thoughts, and keep that aspect, and not focus on negative stuff, there's that. But what becomes a driving force in our life when we can let go of regrets, and let go of focusing on the negative stuff, um, and keep excited about life, I guess you could say.
Maybe that right there is the whole context, whatever, that it can be whatever, and just the acceptance You have to accept where you are and what you're going through before you can move on. And it can be a difficult thing sometimes, more often than not.
Yeah, it's interesting because that idea of life's purpose has been on my mind recently, and the Japanese word for it is ikigai, and it is just kind of a, let's see if I can see what it was exactly. It says a motivating force, something or someone that gives a person a sense of purpose or reason for living. More generally, it may refer to something that brings pleasure or fulfillment. And I was just thinking, because you can be going through life and not realize where your purpose and your focus has been. You might think it's one place, but then it sort of ends up being split, or maybe on something completely other than what you've been thinking it was. I didn't realize how much of my life's purpose had been um, uh, focused on um, building a better relationship with my dad, until I mean, I knew it was a big part of my life, but I didn't realize how much until he had passed away. And so it just made me just realize how much um, how important it is to sort of have a, a that focus be on something that you can, something um, outside of or beyond other people, kind of bigger, or maybe something that kind of will continue on when other things don't. Does that make sense? I think it's important to address that, and look into that, and maybe we're not taught that as children. Hey, it's important to figure out a purpose for your life, and that, hey, that you can change your purpose too at any point in time. You can refocus and make it something else. So if you want to, or add something new to it, or and um, how to navigate that whole idea of it. That was not something that I was ever taught specifically. What do you guys think?
I don't know if it's something we're taught or just ingrained. A lot of times I think, why can't my life be as simple as that little squirrel out there just having a good old time and getting his nuts and not worrying about what he looks like or how he's performing or how many friends he has, or just accepting life as it is and moving forward. I'll have this big idea of some grand purpose, or and how you get from where you're at to that point.
Well, I think that's also kind of part of what I was thinking of in regards to it, is that it doesn't have to be so grand, but it can be, and can be as big as you want it to be. I think we should be, at least for me, I think it helps for me to be aware of what I feel like my purpose is. at least in the moment, not, it's, I kind of stumble into that activity of, like, you were talking about, how you looking past what is going to be happening right now or in the immediate future, and then almost talking yourself out of it, or manifesting yourself out of it, or however you want to think of it. And that, I think that can be very true. You can sort of, in the same motion of getting in alignment with something, you can almost force yourself past and out of alignment with it if you're, and so kind of going with the flow, at the same time finding the balance, at the same time, stopping to smell the roses, but don't, stay there too long, and kind of keep moving. And I mean, all of it can, you kind of have to just find that cadence, I guess, that resonates with you, and then, be willing to move to, well, to stop and recognize what's, where your focus is, where your purpose has been, and maybe recalibrate and work on something, add something to it, or change it completely. I don't know. Sort of, I mean, there certainly is a different seasons in life where, there's better times during your life to do certain things, right? You want to try to get all your schooling and education in early on, right? And do as much of your activities and stuff when you're young, and can you're still in great physical, health and everything. You can try to do as much as you can, but at the same time, there's, I thought that, hey, as a kid, I'm gonna do as many sports and everything I can. But at the same time, now I look back and go, well, I probably shouldn't have done so many full contact sports, that I might have laid off of that a little bit and focused on some other things. And but hey, I got the most I could out of the times and in the moment, and enjoyed them. And um, now it's like, okay, what next?
So then that puts you kind of in the regret phase. I have regrets. I didn't do this or I didn't do that. And I go through that a lot because I chose to be an at-home mom instead of getting a career. Now kind of doing things backwards, being less able and older and supposed to be in this phase of retirement and settling down and doing less. I'm trying to find ways to do more. And it just seems backwards according to whatever the plan that creates this life.
Yeah, well, so our perceptions when we were, back then, were a certain way. If we think, well, would I have changed what my decisions were if I had changed my perceptions back then? And now, would I change, bring that forward to now? Would I change my perceptions now? Would I feel regret now, and instead of feeling, hey, this is a perfect time for me to be doing what I'm focused on? Because hey, maybe now you're more prepared and ready to, you know, handle the things that you want to do than you would have been back then. And so, I don't really see it as too many regrets. There were some certain times where I think, oh, I could have handled that better, or I could have made more of that opportunity, or, I just kind of take those lessons on, and I'm trying to make the most of the now and the short-term future, and have a long-term focus as well. But the overall purpose, I think I'm still sort of developing that a little bit. Right now, I have the ability to kind of get up and move and change my life, change my location, kind of do whatever I can believe I can do. um, and so, yeah, I was actually talking with my mom about all that, and she's like, well, you can do whatever you want. It's like, yeah, I could just go do any old thing, or all new things that I haven't even thought about. But some of the things that I've learned, and some of the things that have brought me, lessons that have brought me here to this space are good lessons and good, well, yeah, what's the word? Like, what, give you some, people give you advice, and some of that advice is actually good. And that advice is kind of the reason why I'm still where I am. And in a good place where I am. So it's hard to let go of all those good things. To have had a family young, when you were, if I could have been a stay-at-home dad and had a family and raised my kids and all that, and I think that would have been wonderful just the same. And then even if I couldn't retire, so I think it would be, there's good points to all of it. And I think no matter what, life each of us live, there's good points and bad points. I think getting back to what you were saying in the beginning, Samantha, or kind of take the good with the bad, and make the most of it, and enjoy the now, and just enjoy it for everything you can.
Exactly, because that's all any of us ever has is the now. That's all we have is right now.
Yeah, the present, the
I
gift.
I feel like it's kind of like a deciding not so much what you want to do. I mean, it is, but it's how you want to be, like a self philosophy of who am I in any given situation, and what is it that I want out of any given experience, I guess. I mean, I was thought about that. It's like, just, when Chris and I were talking, we were just being silly, what if one of us just is gone all of a sudden, and I say these crazy things or whatever, but at the same time, I do like think about that deeper underlying, who am I? Who would I be if I wasn't in the relationship with him anymore? Because, or, if something happened to him, and it's one of those kind of things that you think about, and you're just like, huh, how much of my life is because of, or not because of, that's not really the right word, but how much of my life is shaped because of the relationships I have, and how much of my decision making on who I am and what I want out of life is deeply connected to those relationships, whether it's with my husband or my grandchildren or my son or my daughter or whatever. It's, how much of that is tied to them, and what would that mean for me in terms of who would I be if it wasn't for them, and not in a bad way, it's just in a deeper, like, examining of myself, kind of a aspect. And I don't know, it's an interesting kind of a thought process, is to really look at those things and kind of question, who would I want to be if some big dynamic part of my life changed, such as losing a person. That is a big aspect of it. I mean, Chris and I have been together longer than we were not together. We pretty much have grown our whole entire lives together, with the exception of when I was a teenager, basically. And I think about that sometimes, and it's a weird thought process to think that I am who I am because of the relationships that I'm in. And how, almost like having the rug pulled out from under you, I guess it would feel like. It's like all of a sudden it's just everything's different because another person's not there anymore. And especially if they're a huge part of your life. And so I can imagine that would be the same if if you were to, say, have been in a certain place, like, Jason, like you're saying, you've been in, there for however long you've been there, and you had a lot of focus with your dad, and who are you without him? It's interesting. It's and then a change in your work and your living and all of those kinds of things. It's the whole idea of just digging deeper into yourself and being like, who am I? Who do I want to be in whatever? And what do I want to experience in this life? And when I was going kind of through that little bit of thought process, I was like, and how can I bring that into my now? How can I take this thought process of who I think I am and examine that a little bit and determine that, is that who I want to be? Is that who I want? Is this what I want to experience? Or do I want to experience something different? And if I do, how does that translate within my current life? And, I don't know. It's interesting just to think in the deeper side of our psyche, I guess. I think you were about to unmute, where Catherine jumped out too.
Oh, I was just gonna say that our lives and our purpose are completely shaped by the relationships that we have. And that's was made, apparent this past week when my grandmother was unable to care for herself or live alone anymore. And the whole family's life changed just like that, you know. And so your purpose kind of changes as you go along. Now, I'm very blessed in that um, I've just been helping people heal for most of my life, whether I was doing it as a nurse or whether I've done it after being a nurse in more alternative ways and things. But so that for me is a constant thread in my life, regardless of what else is going on. And it makes me feel um, I don't know, it makes me feel like I'm accomplishing something anyway, because some of the other things that I've, set out to accomplish hasn't actually happened, but um, I still know that I make a difference in people's lives, and hopefully they have some happier days or some healthier days and or more hopeful days. And as long as I can keep doing that, I guess I'm pretty simple because I'm pretty satisfied with that. Like I don't need a lot of things materially, and I don't my health doesn't have to be perfect to do that. I've certainly had my challenges, and there's been times when the only person I've been able to care for was myself. And but then I've managed to get some health back and been able to help more people. So I guess that is my purpose, is helping other people. And as long as I can kind of do that, that makes me pretty happy, pretty balanced. Sometimes it gets a little overwhelming, um, just because of the situations that, where the medical establishment completely gives up on somebody who isn't ready. Sometimes they're ready and that's okay. But sometimes they're not ready. And I have been turned away from the medical establishment and said, there's nothing we can do for you. Go deal with it on your own. And that's how I found all the amazing things I have to help people. So, my and injuries have definitely been a blessing to me as a healer, because it's given me the hands-on experience, which is really one of the best ways to get it, evidently. But I I I won't say I want to say that didn't and doesn't always, I mean, it does now, but it didn't always come naturally, because I'm very much an introvert. And so to step out, and I don't even like to call myself a healer, because God does the healing. I'm just like the instrument or something that he uses. But I had to force that sometimes. It wasn't something that I was naturally, that came easy. And especially um, some of the people that I try to help, when the entire medical establishment has stepped away from them, it kind of, I don't know if I'm brave or insane or a little bit of both. I think it's both. But it takes some guts to go to somebody in their darkest hour like that and try to give them even a glimpse of hope. But I know that I can, because I've been there in that situation and I know what it takes to get out of that situation. And so I think, our life experiences shape our purpose, our relationships shape our purpose. Our purpose changes, although, like in my case, it seems to have followed a certain thread, but I think our purpose can be different every day of the week, really. Um, that's one of the things that has changed hugely in my lifetime, which you touched on earlier, um, Jason, is that used to be people got in one career and they just had that one career their whole life, or that one job or whatever. Nowadays, because we're living longer, well, some of us are living longer, but people can go through multiple full careers. It's not like they're in one career and then they just go on to something else. You can do 15, 20 years in one thing and then still do another 15, 20 years in another, still do another 15, 20 years in another, like and with the internet, and it makes me sad sometimes when I hear people say that, they're not doing enough. They feel bad about themselves because they're not doing enough or whatever, because just the amount of information that we process in a day is more than like our grandparents processed in years of their life, and maybe even their whole life. You know what I mean? Like we're doing so much that we haven't even realized how different it is compared to how life was when we were children, say. How much everything has changed, how much information we're bombarded with every day. Just the number of TV channels on the daggone TV. There used to be 3. If you held the antenna just right and, had some tinfoil on it and everything, you could get 3 channels. Now, I mean, it's just constant. And so it makes me sad because I know people are doing the best they can, with everything going on. We're just living in a bit of crazy times right now. But again, you kind of have to choose where you put your focus. If you're focused on the craziness, you're going to be feeling all the craziness. And if you focus on not the craziness, then you don't feel as much of it. You still feel it because we're all one, but it's not as bad.
It helps disperse all of that so that it's spread out over everybody instead of feeling it all yourself. And maybe that's the problem. We think too much. We have too many choices, too many options. Gets so deep in the minutia, can't make sense of it.
Yeah, I mean, the distractions are all around us. So, to have a guiding focus or a guiding purpose, I sort of have just instinctively sort of fill in the gaps. And, if I see a place where I can help or make a moment a little bit better, or either by stepping in or staying away or whatever it might be, it's kind of I kind of want to I kind of lean towards wanting to like help a lot of the time, but I also realize that sometimes I can best help by not helping. So and so like having a purpose outside of of what other people are doing is what I was kind of getting at earlier. Is like, having something that is beyond, whether it's wanting to be of assistance to people, whether it's want to be a healer or want to impact the world in a certain way. Um, all those things are great. I think even better if it's something that we can maintain through all of the distractions and through all of the um, setbacks. If we can find something, at least for me, I'm trying to find something that I can. Um, I'm trying to reinvent myself, so to speak, and do so in a way where it can. I can still be, have an impact, a good impact, but not get the be so impacted by the everyday distractions um, that I feel like going off the rails, as you mentioned earlier. Um, so I guess that's part of it, right? Finding.
Maybe I'm trying to be off the rails is normal.
There you go. All right.
We all need to go off the rails sometimes, right?
The crazy train.
Oh. Mhm.
But yeah, I mean, you can change. I think we can change our purpose too as we go. If you're not so worried about, like as a kid, oh, I got to pick a career, that I got to be that for the rest of my life. No, you can change your career, you can change your purpose, you can, but and and I think it helps me to realize that just trying to if you make the best decisions you can in the moment, and if that brings you to a point in life, you shouldn't have any regrets, because you've made the best decisions you can throughout it all, and so we're probably doing pretty well. And if you can stop and recognize where you are, and that you can change your purpose, you can make some changes, and you have helped people throughout, and you've had an impact, or um, give yourself a chance to do even more or do even less, whatever it is you decide. It's up to you. So that's the way I'm kind of thinking of it recently.
I think the key in all of that is to find the joy and the love and the peace in whatever situation you're in.
Yeah, great point.
For sure. Well, and I think the other thing is don't be afraid to try something, anything, whatever it is. If you have a thought of, maybe this would be interesting to do, or this would be an interesting place to go, or whatever, because one thing I know, as like you, Catherine, I've had a lot of experiences in my life, and sometimes I wasn't sure, was this going to work out or not, or whatever, and a lot of fear, but yet I, also we just did, we just went for it, right? And it didn't go exactly how I was expecting, but it led me to the next thing, you know and because I could look back on my life and go, God, I wasted my time doing this and that, da, 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 da. But the truth is the things are what led me to where I am now. And and this, what I'm doing right here and right now, is what's going to lead me to whatever happens next. Although, I could try anything, right? Well, not anything, but I could try any number of things right now, and it would lead me to something else. And and I think a lot of times we have this kind of idea in our head that if we try something, that we're going to be stuck in it. We're going to have to. We're going to be, if we don't stay committed, that there's something wrong with us, or that we're less than because we didn't stay, follow through with it or whatever. And yet, at the same time, it's just a journey of experiencing, trying different things, and examining what we feel and about those things. It's like years ago, back when I graduated from high school, I went into a bank job, and worked in a bank for about 6 months, and I thought, oh, this is going to be a great career opportunity, and I'm going to have all these possibilities for my life, and blah blah blah. And I got in there and I started doing it, and I just like hated it, hated it. And but it was, at the time, it was what was paying my rent. My roommate and we had an apartment, and that was paying the rent. And when I decided I wasn't going to do that anymore, I didn't know what I did want to do, but I had to just go get any random job at the time, because I didn't have a clue as to what I wanted. And yeah, and being in that situation with my roommate in that apartment, I had to have income, right? I had to have this income. And but then I realized, okay, I don't want to just work a bunch of random series of jobs just to pay the rent. And I had to kind of let go of that idea that that was where I was supposed to be. And I moved back home with my parents, and at that point it gave me a much broader opportunity to explore what I might like to do in my life. I wasn't trapped by the apartment anymore, if you will, and was able to kind of look at myself and go, okay, what, at that age, I mean, I was, 19 or 20 years old, so I mean, you have so much life experience at that point. But I did look back in my younger years, and I was like, okay, what have I enjoyed? What did I enjoy doing? Or what have I thought that I'd be interested in, or whatever it was? And I had been a volunteer at the zoo, and I had really, really enjoyed that. And so I started looking into job opportunities in, working with animals, which led me to working in a boarding kennel with dogs. Excuse me. And that choice to go and work in the dog kennel just as uh, a possibility of where could that lead me is what led me to where I am right now. I mean, it seems silly. That one choice of giving myself, okay, yeah, I'm only gonna make whatever it was, $7 an hour or something at the point in time. I'm like, yeah, I can't live on that, but it's trying out something that I thought I would enjoy, and I did. I learned a lot in that job, and that led me to pet grooming, which I was a pet groomer, and then I was a salon owner, and I did that for like 17 years. And then, but in the midst of all of that, because I had gone and started that job, I ended up meeting Chris, not because of, it was a weird, didn't have anything to do with each other, but we met each other in the midst of all of that because of that decision that I made. And if I hadn't made that decision, I would have never even met him. And, well, I don't know, maybe I would have, but in a different way. And but I mean, that in and of itself, and without him, I would not be in trucking, or not in trucking. So I mean, it's weird how life kind of, you just don't freaking know, and our decision back when we were living in Westfield so many years ago, our decision to say, throw caution to the wind and jump in with our camper and go RVing. I mean, that decision led me to you guys, and through the weirdest random way of going about life. So I mean, we don't know. And I feel like the biggest takeaway, I think, from this book, and that she keeps trying on all these lives, is that at any given moment we can try on a new life. And it may not seem like it's a new life when there's everything, so many things are the same, but at the same time, one little decision to try a random job that seems interesting based on my earlier interests in my life, it can change the course of everything. It can lead you down paths you never even know. It cause you to meet people that you would never have met, and bring thoughts into your mind that you would never have. I mean, there's just so many things, and we sometimes we think, oh, I can't do that because it's not going to pay the bills, or it's not going to be, it's not a real career, or it's whatever. I mean, even if it was something as silly as I had a thought the other day. I was like, if something did happen to Chris and I was kind of left with, I don't know, less person to be social with, what would I do with that? And I thought, maybe I would go and volunteer somewhere, doing something that seemed enjoyable. And I know that if that happened, I would meet people I would never otherwise meet. I would have experiences with doing things I would not otherwise do that would lead me to some other thing. And it's life is so complicated and yet so simple, and that just trying something, anything, it doesn't even matter what it is, just going somewhere, anywhere, just to see what it's all about, can lead you to unknown possibilities, unbelievable outcomes that you would never even have any idea. I think that sometimes we don't even really need a plan. We just kind of got to think, what would be interesting right now, and just try this new interesting thing and see where it leads. And granted, for those of us who have a lot of responsibilities, some of that is limited, but yet, is it? is it really? I mean, I could probably find an hour a week right now where I could go volunteer somewhere doing something interesting that I think is interesting, and who knows what that might lead to. Or I could just, I don't know, start looking at, I don't know, who knows? We have more
What if
possibilities available to us than we even have any idea.
what if we reversed
Go
that
ahead.
thought that life is so simple, but sometimes can be complicated? We just reverse that.
Yeah, right. Just reverse it. I mean, yeah, it's diverse in every imaginable way. And we don't even realize how diverse it is, how many opportunities are available to us. And I feel like we limit ourselves a lot because of kind of our narrow-minded thinking, even if we don't think we're being narrow-minded, you know? But yet we keep ourselves trapped in our daily whatever that happens to be and think that we don't have any other options available to us, but yet sure we do. Sure we do. Yeah.
Time has
all I
really
got for
gotten
today,
away
I
from
think.
us again.
There's so many possibilities, so many options.
Mhm.
How can we not be narrow-minded in the grand scheme of everything that's available to us? It's not our fault.
Just
We
just
do the
jump
best you
in.
can.
Just jump into some random thing. It doesn't even matter.
Yeah. I mean, it'll unfold perfectly, whatever
Yeah.
you choose. But step out of your comfort zone, right? And
Uh-huh.
if you can, try, because that's where the good stuff is, I think,
Mhm.
right? I mean, it's good to be
Mhm.
in comfort
Mhm.
too. I kind of I like my comfort zones, but all the really interesting stuff happens when you step out of it. Yeah. Take life to the next level. Wave at somebody and smile at somebody and give someone a compliment. See where it leads. Spread the love, right?
Yep, spread the love. I love you guys. I hope everybody has a good week. Don't fall down the stairs anymore, Jason.
I
Fall
always
up the
fell
stairs.
up the stairs.
There you go. That's what you did. I'm gonna try. Flip the script on the
There you
universe.
go.
We've
I
been
love it.
speaking in opposites all day. So love you guys. Have a great week.
Yeah. Thank you. I
Yeah,
love you guys too. Thank you. Have a great day, great weekend.
awesome.
Got a lot to think
You
about.
guys,
I'll be licking my wounds.
for sure.
Thinking about you guys. Appreciate you.
Uh-huh.
Take care.
Awesome. Awesome. All right. For those of you who are watching this, thanks for watching. Give us a like, share this video. We'd love to have you come and join us. All you got to do is look for the link below this video on YouTube and you'll be able to connect with us over on Facebook. So, all right, guys, let's wrap it up for today. Have an awesome, great, amazing week. And we'll see you next time on the Saturday Morning Mastermind. Bye for now.